I've looked at three alternatives that could happen. The first one is a kind of ruralised city, and this is the permaculture solution, which a lot of people talk about. And if you read some of the websites on peak oil, it's often favoured that somehow the city collapses into a series of peasant-like activities where we basically just look after ourselves and produce our own food, and they just want to be able to survive on their own. Now this is, in terms of values, not the solution. So the second option is the divided city, where the wealthy choose to locate in central areas, in inner areas with good public transport, or in special little nodes that are isolated and have everything. They are little eco-cities where water is fully recycled and healthy food is produced, and but it's walled. And in the central and inner areas, the wall is real estate values, because this is happening very, very rapidly. The poor are moving further and further out in more car-dependent locations, and the wealthy are choosing to live where they have other options. You could end up with a set of eco-enclaves surrounded by Mad Max suburbs. The best alternative is that whatever we provide for the wealthy in eco-enclaves should be available to everyone. That cities rebuild themselves in ways that do not depend on oil and recreate a future for themselves in a way that has options for the wealthy and the poor. You kind of have to switch out of this kind of professional way of talking as a planner to saying, well, what does this really mean in our personal choices and the way in which we live? And my particular perspective is framed by a more biblical idea of why we are here and what we live for, and that is constantly telling us that we're not just here for ourselves, that you make a life out of being part of a community, and that your whole priorities, if they are framed around finding yourself a place where you can escape to, fill it with things, and then get everywhere by car, then that kind of city will die, because it's incredibly dependent on this oil that is now running out. However, a city that where people are committed to each other will form into these centres. Each will be different in their own right. They'll have a local identity based around the particular region that they exist in. Like Fremantle is a fishing-oriented port with historic buildings and a centre that works because people like to walk around it. This is very different to Armidale, but Armidale has its own special character. Now, as each part of the city forms its own identity based around the commitment of people to each other, you will end up with a city that has far less need for cars and far less oil dependence. So you can see that it is a spiritual issue in the sense that our priorities, what we value in life, is essentially working its way through in terms of the form of the city and its transport. Something that is also a quite biblical idea. From very ancient times, there were two cities always framed. One was called Babylon and one was called Zion. Babylon itself collapsed because it took its contempt for people and the environment to such an extent that it cut down all the trees in its surrounding area. The Euphrates River silted up and the city's agriculture collapsed, whereas Zion is pictured as a city of jewels, with a river of life and the trees of life lining this river. And the jewels to me are a wonderful image because it's not a garden of Eden back to nature. It's actually a city created by human beings. For me, the jewel is our work. It's what we do to create hope for the future. And if we create our small jewels in our communities that fit together to make a city work, that is the city of the future. It is up to each of us to make that jewel. But you can't just make a jewel and look at it. It has to be a jewel that fits into the city. So it's a community-based jewel. It's what you do to make the community function better. So each of us has got that little jewel to do. My contribution was to help to save the railway and to rebuild it and to make it something that could work on a long-term basis. And it's taken 100,000 cars off the road in Perth, and it's a jewel that I can take around and talk to other people in other cities and say, a small group of us, 12, took on the establishment who said we would never need a train, and we won, and we keep winning. We do have to actually confront the problems that people are being pessimistic about. We can't just say they don't exist and just feel better about it, don't you? Just put on a smile and so on. That's not optimism for me. That's just being unrealistic. Hope is something where you make a choice in the midst of despair, in the midst of pessimism. You say, I will choose to live as though what I can do will make a difference.